Yo, what's up, everyone? You are watching or listening to the My Comic Book Journey podcast, and this part is a Café du Comique section. I just wanted to do a quick video, and I know it's been a while since I have last released a video. I think it's been, let's see here, according to the notes here, it's been 5 months. It's been a while, and I know it was kind of weird because I was really cranking it, and we were, going to, uh, our 200th episode and so forth, marching towards there. But um, certain things happen within the 5 months. The first thing is that um, things happen, life happens. But I think the main thing, and it kind of bummed me out. Okay, I was doing a video and I had a issue of a classic Daredevil, and it was a very popular, very expensive Daredevil issue. And I usually I had it, scanned, get everything all ready to go, and it was still in its poly bag in the box, cardboard. I didn't open it up yet, and but I just placed it in the scanner for a while, and then something bad happened. Um, the stuff that I had was close to an aquarium that I had, a giant aquarium. And the aquarium started to leak. It didn't look like it was leaking, but I just started to notice the wood and everything. I was like, wait, what the heck's going on here? Why is it looking like it's starting to warp? And I started to realize maybe there is a crack under my aquarium or somewhere leaking. I was looking everywhere, couldn't find anything. And next thing you know, I think it was one, just one day I got back and I saw that the water was like nearly halfway. And I'm like, oh, where did everything go? And of course, things spilt over towards the floor, and it spilt over towards this the flatbed scanner. And I said, well, it shouldn't affect things because the flatbed scanner, was covered, and there was although the Daredevil issue was in there. Um, Actually, there was two issues in there. Um, shouldn't you know? There's no way water could get into it. It's still in this poly bag and so forth. I was wrong. The comic, uh, both comics were destroyed. Well, I don't want to say destroyed. It just made it from a mint condition. Well, not mint, near mint, to something uh, terrible. Something that's been, when a comic book has some damage, not good, I guess you could say. Um, Somehow the water got into the bag and everything. It was literally just the cover was literally stuck to the plastic because of the water. Everything was water warp. I tried to pull it gently from, I was gonna let it, I let it dry a little bit, see if I could just pull it. But the more I pulled, the paper got stuck and ripped. And by the time I was able to pull everything out, it was bad. It was bad. It was probably one of the most disheartening things that I've experienced. After, I think I talked about how selling my comic books for the first time and then the second time were things that sucked. But this one, being a Daredevil fan and everything, and there were two issues actually. It was a Daredevil one and another one with Spider Man. Both were old 60s issues. Really expensive and destroyed. And so, needless to say, the scanner was destroyed. Um, I mean, I just it was just bad. So I had to trash that. The scanner I used to scan all my comic book covers. I had to get rid of. No, I didn't get rid. It just put me at a bad place that I didn't want to do anything because I lost two issues. I sh- I should have known better because I left it in there for. I just left it in there because I was going to talk about it in the podcast, and it was a week that passed, and then next thing you know, I saw the aquarium getting lower, and I thought, okay, you know what, I'll put this away. And the thing is, I never thought that it would leak from the bottom like that. And needless to say, I didn't think that, especially with the cover on, with a plastic baggie, even a cardboard, that it would still get damaged. I never fathomed that. But looking at the amount of water, and of course being a huge aquarium, while it didn't look like much, a lot did fall, and there was a lot of water damage. Not just to my comic books, not just to the scanner. I had other things there that um, were damaged. I think, fortunately, the other things are nothing that were so important to me. They were mainly like, you know, back then it was a lot of press junkets and press things that I got from various entertainment companies. Those were destroyed, but it was, the way I look at it, it was nothing, nothing that impacted my life greatly for years to come. There were certain collectibles that got damaged, but if anything, though, it was just those two comic books. I think those are the ones that I treasured the most, and the one that were lost. So, yeah, it kind of made me not want to do a comic book podcast. Although the other channels I've been podcasting almost daily, but when it comes to comic books, I just didn't want to think about it. I just it was just disheartening. Yeah, I could buy those comic books again, but I don't know. It's just very expensive. And sometimes that happens. You hear about a collectors who get scammed, and they lose their stuff. And this was not being about scammed or anything. It was just more of, that's kind of what. First, like, why was your aquarium? Why was your scanner near the aquarium? It's because I had it connected to a laptop, and something I could just scan whenever. It was just something convenient for me. Instead of putting it on a shelf or anything, I just put it right next to me. So whenever I was like working and on my laptop, it was just easy to do. But yeah, it was very disheartening, and I did lose a lot of things. I did, and a part of that also was the fish damage, the death of the fish. Um, that's another story, and that's another major loss. Um, so to make, I guess to make the story short, on top of losing the scanner, on top of losing the comic books, this was the other major thing, and possibly the main major thing. A lot of the fish that I breeded, um, and were made that were really, really expensive fish, special type of colors and so forth, um, were also lost. Um, Again, that was disheartening because that took a lot of time, and it was something that I managed to do and was pretty happy about that. I was able to accomplish certain things of breeding, because breeding fish, it's never an easy thing, especially if you're doing certain fancier fish. But at the same time, I was able to do that, and um, losing the fish was also, if I felt like it was a sign. And fortunately, I was able to still have quite a bit that I was able to find um, a company or pet, one of those pet stores, a local company that took my fish and gave me a good, what it's worth, and gave me a good amount of it. What I like about the most is that though I lost money, they were able to make things right instead of not shortchanging me to the point where I have nothing. They gave me like about at least $500, better than nothing, right? So I can't complain. Yeah, I could have used that money just to buy those comic books again, those two, but I didn't. It was just more of I just needed a break because I was a little bit devastated by losing those comic books, and yeah, it was uh, it was a sad time. But I would like to, I guess with me, releasing this video again, I guess you could say that, yeah, I'm. I don't want to say, yeah, I'm back, and I'm ready to do this, full force. It's kind of hard because I don't have my scanner anymore. Um, but at the same time, I think it's something that to think about, moving forward. How can I podcast? Because there's something that one thing I do like is using my own comic books to use as a cover, because I think when you see a lot of wiki or omnibus stuff, the covers, they're not the same. They're like really ultra, vibrant. They don't have the same type of. It's almost like a different type of look, right? The cover that are depicted on these omnibus, they're not usually. Yes, it's the cover, but it's a little bit different. I guess you could say certain things are missing. So in a way, I kind of like using that and also showcasing certain pages from that actual comic book. But I might have to just do it without having to scan and just talk about it, which is fine, I suppose. But in a way, I still have a lot to discuss when it comes to comics, and there's just so many comic books I'm reading and read, and I need to really you know um, share that with all of you, my thoughts and everything. But there are quite a bit of comic books that are featured on this channel already, and it's just more of, maybe it's a restart, reboot. I don't know, but I do know that it took a while. It took me months to get over that sting of losing something so valuable, and that's just the fish, those expensive fancy fish that I've breeded, and also the comic books, and yeah, you just got to move forward, right? So that is the story, man. That's the story. I'm not gonna. It was not that I was pod fading or anything like that. It was just more of things happen, and life happens, and sometimes you have your good times, and sometimes you have your bad times in life, and that was something that was not you know not expected, but you know there are people. I the more I thought about it, the more I look, and I said, you know what? There are people out there in this world who have experienced much worse than I have, especially with their comic book collection. May it be a hurricane or tornado or a fire or something that wiped out their whole collection. How can I complain about two comic books when there were people out there who have lost more than I have? And that's true devastation right there. And how do you bounce back from that? Easy. You start over, if you want, you know, again, I started over years ago. Remember, the first comic book I had, the comic books I have had, I sold that to a friend's brother that didn't pay me back, and they ended up moving, and I lost money and I lost my comic books. The second time was mainly pure stupidity of selling my comic books because I wanted to distance myself because I was, you know, it was one of those grown-up things saying, you know what, okay, I'll stop reading comics. I don't need these in my life anymore. I've had these for so long. Time to sell. And that's including, yes, I got rid of all my Batmans and I got rid of all my X-Men, and especially those first appearance of Bishop and and Gambit and everything, right? Well, it didn't take that long for me to regret that, and I ended up having to buy everything back all over again. But the thing is that my collection is much larger than it has ever been before. It started, well, how did you do this? Well, if you have a good comic book store that is just, they're just full of space and full of older comic books that they've people traded in for credit or whatever, they want to get rid of those. And sometimes they have comic book sales, maybe $1 a comic book or something like that. But what I've done is I make mass lot deals. I say, if I was getting these comic books right here, what kind of deal can you give me? If I was to buy 500 comic books from you, what deal would you give me from your dollar sale? If I was to make that commitment. And, they would say, okay, well, how about this? $300, $500 500 comic books. No questions asked. Doesn't matter which title, whatever were in the boxes that they wanted to get rid of for $1. These are not their high ranked stuff. Well, actually, this comic book store, they didn't really go through everything saying, okay, this one's worth a lot of money. They just said, you know what, this is what we have. If you want it, dollar per issue. That's how they usually operated. And I was lucky to have a local comic book store that was like that. And for they would often give me deals. I said, because they wanted to see, is this guy really legit? Is he really going to spend that much? And sure enough, I spent more than that. And so they said, you know what? You're legit, man. You're willing to give. I need space for my for my toys or for other comics, and hey, go for it. So I was very fortunate in that aspect. I was able to get a lot of comic books back, also from certain deals online. Granted, it was not, it was a little, maybe a little more expensive, but at the same time, though, I still don't have everything that I had. For instance, the original Spider-Man McFarlane ones, which shouldn't be too hard to find, right? But the thing is that I do not want to spend top dollar or high dollar, or, for something that I used to own, and that's what bugs me the most. Of used to own, I shouldn't have sold it, but I did. And so, certain comic books, as I mentioned, first appearance of Gambit, first appearance of Deadpool, I sold those. I think I sold like my whole X-Men collection and other Spider-Man collections, Batman collections, all to a family member for just a few hundred. I think it was just maybe 100 or 200 or so. That was it. I just wanted to get rid of it, and boy did I regret it. But again, now my collection is even more larger than it was after I sold. Starting over is not that difficult, especially if you have a good job, and if you are able to get good deals, it helps. But with that being said, it just depends on how. I think one of the reasons why I made the forward push to sell my comic books also is because I was also getting more, was becoming more into Japanese manga, which was I was reading mostly. And I said, you know what? I had too many boxes of comic books. This is really taking up space. I'm gonna sell it. Well, now I have more comic books in cardboard cases, but I'm actually trying to do things differently by keeping them in a different. It's not in cardboard boxes anymore. I'll tell you that much. They've made some things that are much better to carry your comic books in. But yeah, so that's what's happened in the last 5 months, and hope you understand. And we have all been there before. We've all had things that bad things happen, and unfortunately, that those things sting. But maybe losing a family member, losing a pet, those are something that is, those things put you in perspective. People who love the ones who passed away and stuff, that stuff hurts. That's true pain right there. You can never get those people back in your life. You'll have those memories. Comic books, you could always get them. Those memories will always be there, but yeah, you can still buy them. But losing, there are things worse in life that could happen, and you just can't take life for granted, and you just have to put things in perspective. Yes, losing comic books like I have, it stung. It did sting. It did sting enough for me to not want a podcast, but at the same time, those months also gave me a reflection of there are people who lost more than I have, and I figured, you know what, I what I lost, I could rebuy again. So I've been there before. Had to start over before with my comic book collection, and I'm back there again. I might have to get rid of it. Who knows? But it does happen. And I was reading, looking at a Reddit post recently of a person's wife. I mean, not person's wife, but their friend's wife, who gave up her husband's comic book collection to a friend, and that's sad to see. And that's one of the reasons why I did my comic book collection, my comic book journey, the podcast, and also I look at it as, what when in your life do you have a chance to go through your comic books? You read it multiple times when you're a child, maybe when you're a young adult, but in your lifetime, if you have a long collection, do you when do you get a chance to read it again? And for me, there's so many titles that I've never read before. Titles that I bought because I wanted to see how things were in various points in time in history. Because a lot of comic books do reflect history, especially of how social norms were at the time. But the thing is that, yeah, I love reading comic books. I love reading. It's always been a part of my life. And I may not have the best eyes that I once had. And sometimes it's even hard to read a comic book because sometimes the letters are so hard and then I have to wear my glasses. But, um, you know, it is what it is, right? It's something that I've always been entertained, and, um, I think there are people, you know who people are when they tell you they love reading. Maybe they read it on their iPad, or they read a book. That's how I am. I'm a reader. I've been entertained by reading. And while I may not read books in terms of like I've used to, mainly more comic books now, or even manga, it's all good. It's all good. You know, I just, if anything, is just that's how I grew up with, and it was introduced with, and I have no I have no regrets. I've read some amazing titles, and I'm continuing to read comic books. Some great, some awesome, some meh. But if anything, I'm entertained, And um, there's so many ways to be entertained, and from video games to watching movies, or there's so many things these days to compete for your time. Back then, when I was a kid, after a long day of studying and doing homework, um, my dad was often on the television, so I could never watch. So, yeah, I had my own TV and had video games, but the thing is, though, is that comic books were my go to for entertainment. And there was just so many characters, so many things to read that enlightened me. And I think that's why I like talking about it with all of you, because I know a lot of you have been there before and are still feel that way today. Okay, everyone, you all take care, and I will see you later. Wink, wink, and